Hi, Jim Doyle from Fire in the Hole Distributors again. What I'm going to do on this particular video is explain the difference between the pulse plugs and the direct hits, and also the care and feeding of your spark plugs, just in general. First of all, pulse technology. Inside the pulse plug and inside the direct hits, there's a peaking capacitor. What the peaking capacitor does is when the coil fires, there's a couple milliseconds in there before it actually bridges the gap and fires between the electrode and the ground strap. In that 2 milliseconds, the peaking capacitor charges. When the spark does jump the gap, the peaking capacitor drops its charge and makes a much, much larger spark, going from about 50 watts to close to 1,000,000 watts. Now, the difference between the pulse plugs and the direct hits. The direct hits also have a peaking capacitor on the inside. There are a lot of spark plugs which don't come in the heat range that some of our units use. The BE2 has an 8-9 rating on an NGK scale. Some of our units have a 10. And some of our units, like mine, take a very small 10 millimeter by 1/2 inch reach plug. So, since Polestar does not make a 10 millimeter by 1/2 inch reach, we use the direct hits. The direct hits screw onto the top of a standard non-resistor spark plug and turn the spark plug into a pulse plug. In order for the capacitor to fire properly, the spark plugs for the direct hits have to be non-resistor. Most spark plugs that come from the factory, including a standard BE2 plug, have a 5K ohm, 5,000 ohm resistor. Resistors in spark plugs are there only to help radio noise. In order to keep the radio noise down, since the setup has no resistor, have the 5K ohm resistor in the cap. It doesn't matter in the circuit whether it's in the cap or in the plug, and it keeps down the radio noise. As we had in the other video, if you still have radio noise, we can provide the shielding kit, and that really knocks down the radio noise. So that's the difference between the Polestar pulse plugs and the direct hits. There's S100s and S80s. S80s are made for confined spaces where you don't have a whole lot of room between the spark plug and, say, a frame or whatever. Now, care and feeding of spark plugs. How long should they last? Well, regular spark plugs are going to last, X number of hours. Pulse plugs are going to last about the same amount of time. Some books say to replace them in 25 or 50 hours. I'll tell you what to do. Take the plug out, look at it. If it's carboned up, which is very common in our two-stroke engines, clean the plug. And here's what not to do. First of all, never, never, never take a steel brush to a spark plug. All that great platinum or gold or iridium or whatever they plated the end of that plug with, you've now removed with your wire brush and pretty much taken a lot of the heat characteristics and the firing characteristics away from the plug. Some people say, well, what about a brass brush? No, because then you've plated all that great stuff with brass. So soak them in carburetor cleaner, toluene, xylene, electronics cleaner, whatever. Put them in a little plastic bowl that doesn't get dissolved by the solvent. Let them soak a day or 2 or 3 or a week. It doesn't matter. It's not going to get inside the plug, not going to hurt it at all. That's going to soften up the deposits. Take a parts brush, which is something like a toothbrush, a bristle brush, and then just brush out all the deposits. Check the gap again. Make sure it's gapped correctly according to your manufacturer's recommendations, and it should last you a while. If you keep having a missing problem, right, check the plug. The other thing, every once in a while, buy a new cap. They're cheap. It's a real easy thing to do. The caps break down. You start leaking voltage and you'll have a misfire. The plugs have to be replaced when the plugs no longer function correctly. The advantage to the direct hits outfit is the fact that the direct hits themselves never have to be replaced. You simply take the direct hits off your unit, take the plug out, replace the plug with the same non-resistor plug, put the direct hit back on, replace the cap. It's cheap. Might as well do that while you're doing it, and snap it all together, and you're good for another, another 50 or so hours, and check it again. Well, that's it for now. That's the care and feeding of spark plugs. If you have any questions, website's going to be scrolled at the bottom, and you can always get me there. Jim Doyle, Fire in the Hole Distributors. Have a great day. Thank you.